Hey everyone.
Hey, hey,
Hello.
Finally here.
Hello.
here we are.
I think we're just going to get to it. We don't have time for favorite things or front desks.
We don't
There's
have
no
time for
check-in.
goofing around.
No time for goofing around.
What? I need a deep
There's no
breath.
favorite things. We're getting right to it.
No favorite
So I
thing.
watched we're talking about the Breath of Fire documentary.
We are.
So for everyone that's not us that doesn't know
And
that
this
right
is
away.
and this is Wi-Fi pod.
That's right.
Oh
Wi-Fi
yeah,
pod
that part.
on the Breath of Fire documentary that is on HBO Max. If you haven't seen this documentary, it is about Yogi Bhajan. And more specifically, Yogi Bhajan and one of his students, named Katie Griggs. Is that what it is?
hmm Yep.
And who went by the name Guru Jagat, and her story of having her own yoga studio, but also engaging in pretty much not the same, but many of the similar abusive practices as Yogi Bhajan. And this documentary tries to tell this story in dramatic fashion. Honey, you were saying that you were hoping for this to come full circle, and I was thinking this documentary was okay. It was interesting through episodes 1 and 2. We watched episode 3 together, and we're like, okay, it's talking about some of these really negative things, really awful things that Yogi Bhajan and another person, Howie Jiwan, were doing. After I watched the 4th episode, this was the biggest, steamiest pile of dog crap I've ever seen in my life. I I have so many strong
I
feelings
laughed a lot.
about how
I
garbage of a documentary this is, and I'm trying to own my own bias here. Um, so that's my hot take. My hot take was like, okay, first episode is okay, interesting. I didn't really know a whole lot about Yogi Bhajan, and I never heard of Guru Jagat. I think you had mentioned her at some point, honey, but I mean, I didn't really resonate, or I didn't really remember. Third episode, okay. Fourth episode, so disappointed. Yeah, I know. Sabrina, what's your
yeah,
hot take? What's your initial thoughts before we go into some details?
I took some notes here.
Nice. All right. Look at
What
your
a good
notes. Mine
student.
are so much more sparse. I had intention of taking really copious notes, but I got about 4 sentences. Sabrina, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it really goes to show that, and I think that maybe she started the practice with, I don't know if good intentions or what is the correct word, but this to me is a story of how anything can become corrupt, right?
Yeah.
The ego can, that's the trick, right? We're given this platform, and time again people go to shit. It's what happens. It's what happens. And I mean, we don't seek for that to happen, but this is a storyline of abuse of power. It goes into the whole, even the sense of the money. It really got me. I mean, I had to laugh. And I hope that other people did too, in the sense of they got so desperate in the sense where they're cold calling people and selling printer ink for
Right.
like an astronomical price of like, how much more money do you need? How much more power do you need? And at what cost? And, it highlighted the abuse that had gone on in 3HO, which, is not news to us. And I commend, first and foremost, anyone who steps forward in their power to speak their truth on things that happen any place. So, and how 3HO and how they handled that after that had happened. So I think that they did a good job in the sense of like who they pulled in to kind of talk about things, what insiders and things of that nature, and to see where they're at today. The one person that they were interviewing, his daughter is still in the organization, still very active in the organization. But yeah, this is another story, to sum it up, about an empire of abuse of corrupt people. And it's something that can't be ignored. Abuse of power, abuse of, what happens when you take in money and you more more and more, and when is enough, all the way to the last episode where it's like a conspiracy theory about Katie's death. Like, the question in the last episode is, did she really even die?
Wow.
I asked the pendulum just about 30 minutes ago. Because I was like, is she really gone? Like, I don't know. Like, and I mean, it talks about Seva, and as far as like, having people work without any money and not paying people appropriately, or having some sort of, so there's a lot of questions within this. And I'm gonna take a moment to recollect myself and let someone else jump in. But yeah, that's my sum of all of it. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I should say that when I gave the thumbs down, I am being super critical of the filmmakers, of how they're framing things. I should say that. Like, this is not about any, like, as soon as Sabrina's like, good for everyone to speak up against abuse, I was like, ugh, that wasn't my point. I am critical, especially towards the end,
We know that.
okay, yeah, I know. I just had to say it. Of
Yeah.
I mean, because this is a documentary, right? Everything I was thinking about this. I was driving to get the dog's dog food, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I wanted to be kind of critical of a couple of the people that spoke, the journalists or the yoga historian, but I think ultimate responsibility is the filmmakers, because maybe they did ask the questions that I wanted to have the guys answer, or maybe they didn't. Like, the ultimate responsibility, I mean, it's on them because they got to decide what was out and what was put in. So like, I want to say to the historian, like, you are not asking good historian questions, and you're not doing this right. But like, I don't know what's in, what's out. So like, it's the responsibility is on the filmmakers. Honey, what were you saying before?
Before I lost connection.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So I'm not a documentary filmmaker, and it seems to be, because I've recently been looking into this, because I'm like, this seems like a bad documentary. And then I'm like, is it? And I feel like maybe my understanding of documentaries is a little bit more grandiose than it should be. And it, to me, feels like the people who made the documentary had a point, and then they just collected evidence to support the point that they had. They weren't actually doing any kind of like investigative journalism.
Right.
There wasn't seeking other perspectives, different voices, different points of view. It was like, here's our thesis statement, right? It's a very typical 11th grade research paper where I've written a thesis, and now I'm only going to find sources that support what I'm about to say, and ignore everything else. And so that felt disheartening, and that we have lost yet another opportunity to talk about how any human being is capable of this misstep, and a misstep that follows, and a misstep that follows. And I think, like, to paint people as these big, like, evil, mass manipulators, like masterful manipulators, although that might not be completely incorrect, I think it makes it easy for people that are involved in spiritual communities to not think that they have to have discernment and question ethics and standards of the organizations that they belong to. Because it's like, oh, well, I know him. He would never, when what's true, I believe, is that an unchecked ego is lethal. And if you don't have conversations about power, if you don't have conversations about redistribution of power and resources, and recognizing where power is inherent, then you run the risk of these things happening in organizations. And the reason that this feels like such a such an affront, no, that's loud, or it feels so icky, right, is because this is a spiritual community, and we're mixing spirituality and unmoored capitalism. Like, so like there could have been such an opportunity to be like, where does yoga and capitalist materialism, white supremacist structure not overlap, and can't overlap in a healthy way long term? Like, it is destined for this kind of shit. I feel like it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah. I kind of thought it's very interesting because I was thinking about the overlap of spiritual. It's like the manipulation of people through spiritual practices, because they genuinely are looking for something, some sort of healing, some sort of practice to help them. And if they're already in that mindset, it can be hard to separate, oh, they're make this thing I'm doing is making me feel good. You are very easily allow yourself to disregard anything that may or may not be seen as toxic, right? It's like there's so easy to look past that when you are experiencing any type of healing, you know. And that's what, like you said about the responsibility, about like as leaders, as teachers, the ultimate responsibility. And the phrase trauma informed just keeps floating through my head as I'm watching this. I'm like, trauma informed? That, I mean, like, this is not that at all. This was very exploitative. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that
go ahead, Josh.
Wait,
no, I was just gonna say, I think that the story to me was like definitely a story that they're trying to tell is on greed, and like how, I mean, and I guess like it was. I think the part that was really disheartening was the way that they represented Kundalini as a whole. Like that it's like it's a joke. Like they make it into a joke, like in a way, and like they trivialize all of it because of the really the interviews that these people give about these people, right? Like where it's like these people, I mean, I think it's incredibly disgusting, the things that the stories that are told about Yogi Bhajan, and the way that the secretaries worked and the grooming and all that is like abhorrent, like regardless of anything else that is said, like trauma informed is like, we have to admit that is disgusting. And like, no matter what the outcome of lawsuits or whatever the case is, the fact that, Guru Jagat and Rama Institute, as well as 3HO at the beginning, just completely denied these people's experiences, and like completely anti-feminist, like patriarchal, like silencing of these people is like disgusting, like, and I think that that's just something that, as part of it, as part of the documentary, that's what they wanted to tell, was like that they want to make people sure that these people are as bad as you could ever imagine, which I think is tough when people are dead. And that, especially for Guru Jagat, for her to have her parents involved in talking about her was very strange. I felt like it was like a really weird perspective to have your parents kind of trashing you like after you're dead, and like kind of like making it seem like that she was a fraud all along, that like there was never a moment that it was sincere, there was never a moment that there was a good intention. It like makes it all feel, and also some of the things that she's on camera saying are like ridiculous, like absolutely nuts at the end. So like, I guess I could kind of see it if you've known someone their whole life, and then all of a sudden there's people worshiping them basically, or like celebrating them in a way that like you're like, this is Katie, like she's my alcoholic friend from college, like there's that's like an easy way to paint someone as one thing, and to paint the whole practice as that is, I think really unfortunate. But also it's like, I think that it is really to not discount any of these people who have claimed that they were abused. 600 plus people who have come forward to say that they want reparations from 3HO, like that they deserve to be um, given retribution for what they had to go through and what their parents put them through, and like all that kind of stuff is just so sad. And it's like, I think that there are many, many examples of this taking place all over like you said, Sabrina, where it's like, it feels like, is there an opportunity to do something like this without that greed and capitalism taking hold? Like, is there a way, like, to continue something that is beautiful? Because it's like, you think about the Catholic Church, you think about like, things that are started off in with the purest of intentions, or not, but using a powerful practice to then like coerce into all of this corruption. I mean, the phone scams are crazy. The fact that they were like,
Crazy.
that doesn't even make sense to me. It's like, who was sitting in that, like, they were like, all right, so this is what we're
And
going to
there's
do.
like, there's no karma. There's no karma over the
There's
phone.
no karma over the phone.
No karma
That's
over
what they
the
say.
phone.
There's no karma over the phone.
It's crazy.
I
Like,
think my jaw just like dropped when
oh my God.
when I was like
But
oh
desperate,
my.
right? It just shows how much as a human or that organization, we can become desperate beings, desperate for more and more and more. And when is it enough? At what cost is it enough? And then, we just start justifying things. Is that what we do? We just start justifying things. And,
Yeah.
it hurts me in a sense to see, because, I can relate to some of the clips that first started where it's showing Katie in her early teachings, right? I would agree with things that she's saying, what she's teaching, and some of the verbiage, right? That I felt like she was, in a sense, teaching this connective experience, this power within yourself. And then the clips that they start to show throughout these 4 episodes, you can see where this person went from this here to this over here.
You know what I think is
tell
interesting?
you can tell the fear that her teachings went from this is a spiritual practice to almost as if she's teaching and she's instilling this fear and this ego, all of that you can see in that process, that progress of it. Yeah, so it was very
Well, that's
disheartening.
one of the things that I found so interesting, is because the documentary seemed to take the angle that the culprit is Kundalini. Like,
Yeah.
the system Kundalini itself is insidiously evil. And we have proof now, because it wasn't just this one guy that did this thing. Then we have this young woman who does essentially the same thing, archetypally the same thing. And what is interesting that they said, but it was kind of in passing, that both Yogi Bhajan and Katie, at the end of what they were doing, were so disconnected from what they were teaching. Like, so we want to blame it on Kundalini, but then in the same breath, it's like Yogi Bhajan wasn't following Ayurvedic practices. He wasn't healthy in the end of his life. He wasn't doing yoga. I mean, someone was like, I've never seen him do yoga ever. Right? So, one of the things that's so important, I think, when we teach our students is that you have to be a lifelong student if you're going to teach. You can't stop being in that
You can't
role.
just be a teacher. You have to, like they said, a seeker and a teacher. She went from being a seeker to being a teacher. And part of being a teacher is
Being a seeker.
practicing what you preach and being a seeker. We are never not students. We're never not learning again. And the moment that you stop learning is the moment that you disempower everything. And
well, the ego comes in, right? I mean, we've all experienced lulls in our practice, and how easy it is when there isn't an anchor there, whatever the practice is. Kundalini, Vinyasa yoga, running,
I've compared
knitting.
this to my son's basketball practice.
Yeah.
He goes to basketball practice. Before that, he might have eaten a cheeseburger. I don't know. But you know what I mean? He goes to practice, he puts his shoes on, he gets his head in the game, he does the practice, he does what he needs to do, and then he walks off the court, you know? And yes, if we take care of ourselves outside, it's going to make that practice even easier. It'll make it different. I don't like to say easier, it'll make it different. So I've been feeling like that with my Kundalini practice. Okay, it's time to go to the basketball court, put on my
Right.
basketball
Deeper,
shoes, and it's
to go deeper.
time to go deeper. And you
Mhm.
know, to me there's a difference, but to me there's no difference in that. I'm going into my practice with what I practice, and that's no different than him going to his basketball practice, getting his head in the game. And it just happens to be mine's a spiritual practice. So
And I think it's what keeps you aware of your limitations as a human. You know, I think something that is prevalent in hierarchical spiritual communities is this idea that there's ascension, or you've reached this magic level and now you're above. Now you don't have to. I think there was that scene where Katie was like, you guys can do the practice and I'm going to sit here.
right.
And it's like, maybe that was taken out of context, you know, like, because it's hard to do a practice and teach the practice at the same time. And maybe also refer back to, and this is the practice that I do, you know, like prior to being your guide on the mat. You know, we have to stay, because the human ego is so slippery. And if you're disengaged from a practice, it's so easy for that to take the front seat, and all kinds of privilege, entitlement, better than spiritual narcissism, all of those things to come into play. I mean, I have seen it with people that I have worked with, you know, go from a humble, mission driven energy to a, I must have green juice delivered to my bedroom every single day, you know, in the matter of weeks. It's
Yeah,
so quick.
it is.
And so I'm watching this and I'm like, I've seen this in a ton of different spiritual settings and communities where the teachers suddenly decide that they are higher than. And so I wish that they had talked more about how toxic hierarchical spiritual systems can be, because that is something, regardless of what we're worshiping or who we're praying to or how we're chanting or what hymns are in the book, right? That is a common denominator in a lot of places where there is abuse of power, is this hierarchical, like, you can't tell Yogi Bhajan that something is a bad idea. You can't talk Katie out of something when she's decided she's going to do it. You know, you can't call her on spending habits that she was having, or how dare you, you know, like,
Right.
if you can't question people in a system, huge freaking red flag. Huge.
And it's talking about the people at the top, like you said. Okay, so if we take the documentary as a whole for the people that they interviewed, those people aren't saying Kundalini caused me harm. They're not saying, they're actually not, from what I'm recalling in this moment, they're not discrediting the practice. They'll say, this helped me. And it happens to be that that person is corrupt. uh, maybe not at that time, specific moment in time, but that ended up being. So I mean, I don't discredit like these people's experiences with Kundalini yoga. It is a shame that the teachers became what they became in that process. But I think that some of the people I'm reflecting in this moment, who they interviewed, they're still emotional about it. Like, Kundalini helped, the practices helped me with this, helped me with etc. Um, and I mean, something that us here at Yoga Farm, we don't say that Kundalini yoga practice, you have to go to your mat and you have to be there practicing for half an hour or an hour or 90 minutes. Really, we're householders. And to me, Kundalini yoga practice is this moment here, a moment ago, when I paused and, you know, I did my own internal thing. And I do that throughout the entire day, uh, you know, to like keep myself in balance. And so recognizing that too, that, you know, you can stay in practice throughout your entire day. It doesn't have to be that sacred time on your mat, set up like this, look like this, sound like this. That's never what, that's never what we taught or what we guided.
Yeah, and I think for me that's one reason why I'm super critical of this, of the filmmakers of this documentary, because like they don't give the practices a fair shake. I think I think Jeannie, what you said is the people committing the abuse and the practices are intertwined and inseparable. Like there's no like saying these people are bad and did awful things, and these practices have merit and that should be at least brought up. Like especially for, it's weird because it's like, especially I was flipping out about this the way this ended. Like the end of this documentary, it's 3.5 episodes, 3 3/4 episodes of saying, of portraying Katie in this light of like, you know, how toxic she is as a boss, about her spending, all this stuff, right? I mean, it doesn't really, it just paints her in this light. But the last 20 minutes after they talk about, after she died, it was like a retrospective of like, Katie wanted to be a poet. Katie wanted to be an artist and was finding herself. I'm like, are we talking about the same person? Like, I don't
Right.
understand how you can like paint this rosy picture of this person when you have just laid out all her crimes. Like, it is so like, it's not journalistic
And
integrity for
showed
me
text
to be like,
messages. They
oh,
even showed
she was
text
also
messages.
this and wanted this, but she did it like that's not integrity as far as like how you portray this person. Like that is not, this wasn't an issue of like, I will lay this information out in front of the viewer and let them make up their minds. It like that to me was not what this was. It was so, to me, egregious about how they tried to like paint her at the end. I'm like, this is like for me the movie Cruella. Like you're trying to make the hero out of someone who wants to skin puppies. Like how I can't, this to me, like you have just spent so much time trying to like show me all the shitty things she has done, and like to be like, oh man, poor Katie and her friends miss her, and I can't. But like, are you serious? Like
Well, you
the
kind of
viewer's
can't.
not. I mean, for me, I'm like, there's no. This person was corrupted and
Yeah.
fine with being so. Like, you know what I mean? Like, was never like, maybe we shouldn't, or like, what's best for my students. It was just like, more, please. So like to see that last 10 minutes,
Yeah.
honey, I was seething. I was just like, I couldn't even. Like, I wish you were. Oh man, it was bad. It's not
The
good.
part made me laugh.
Well, and I think that
where,
when I watched,
go
I
ahead,
think we're
Josh.
talking over each other. I was gonna say,
sorry.
Josh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like the same way, Matt, where it's like I also feel like the way that they outlined it, and even what everyone said, was actually Katie was being basically run by Harajuwan. Like she was like, he was like in charge, and kind of similar to the way that Yogi Bhajan was running things. He was in charge, and he was like totally, the ultimate decider and abuser, and everything was basically set up to protect him and serve him. And Guru Jagat was like, she was working for Harajiwan, who also like committed tons of crimes and had tons of things that he had done in the past. I don't know how he's walking free, honestly. No idea how that person still isn't in jail. But it's like, I think that they really made her a scapegoat of something that, like, I think running a business the way that she did, obviously abhorrent, being a mean boss, but a lot of what she sounded like to me was desperate. Like she sounded desperate to like keep it going and like to build it bigger, and to go from being lost with no purpose, college dropout, alcoholic, to then all of a sudden, like basically working your way into, like, whether by lying or saying that you were specifically picked by him or whatever. Harajuwan told her to do that. Like, it's like he is there guiding her all along. And if she actually believes that Harajuwan is what Yogi Bhajan said he was, which is like this, or at least he said he was. I didn't hear Yogi Bhajan ever say it. That Harajuwan is like, I've been your servant in every lifetime, billions of lifetimes, like, and he's this guy from like Long Island, like, and is like a scam artist, like actually a corrupt scam artist. who is like playing a part, like he's acting, like, and so I feel like when you see somebody as your mentor and they're acting like that and you gain benefit from it, you're like, I'll just do that too. Like, why not? I'm just going to jump on that and gain the power from it. And then once everyone is like, basically you're the almost like a divine, like chosen next step for this practice. How I think I feel like she got manipulated as well, like, and I think that there is a level of like I have a level of empathy for her in a sense, because I don't know that like we say, I don't know how many people could handle that type of glow up in that type of short amount of time and then be like, I'm just humbly doing this. Like, I'm very humbly doing this, when none of her teachers have ever done that. There hasn't been like, it seems like she was a part of that lineage as well. The corruption, the manipulation, and that kind of thing. And like, I don't know. I think that, like we said, can come for anyone who's in power, and especially in a capitalistic society where the goal is to make money. It's like they're like, her spending money. Okay, yeah, she's making a lot of money. She's not doing the details. Like, it's like there should be, but like, it's like, I feel like I've heard that before too. Like the CPAs, man, we need a new CPA. Like, it's like we need someone else to look at the numbers differently. It's like, well, numbers are numbers, like it kind of is what it is. And so I don't know. I feel like and then to bring it all back at the end and be like, no, but she was a person, like she was a person. It's all so contradictory. And I think that maybe that's part of the story too. And that's what they like. There's this salaciousness to the corruption overall, like that there can be something pure like Kundalini that actually works. And that these people, and it is a practice that they all benefited from in many different ways. And so to be like the figurehead of it is like, it's like having a superpower that you're able to imbibe on people. Like, this will give you this will give you this. And the way that it's set up, like in, I think that it's part of being in a capitalistic situation where it's like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be that way, but it's very difficult to abstain from that ego fulfilling stuff,
Yeah, I think that you make so many great points, Josh, around how she was seduced and manipulated by power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, sure, we could say that this was like the golden ticket kind of was dangled in front of her, and it's just like, just do what we say and you'll get to be this guru type of person. And I still feel so, I think I would be able to have a little bit more empathy around her situation if she didn't come out of the gate with so much feminine empowerment language. Like if she had just been like, yes, we bow to the hierarchy.
Yes.
We love the patriarchy. We listen to the men and we do what they say and we don't question them because our access to proximity to power is this white man in a turban making, shit up about what he has done in his life. And
which he wasn't a yogi when he came over here. He saw an opportunity with the hippies in the late 60s, the 70s, and this person rolled with it. And like,
oh, you're talking about Yogi Bhajan. Yeah, I was talking about Hari.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about Hari. I think Katie made choices, and I think that would be something that this documentary could have brought everyone into this place of like, what's your price? What's your price? What's your, like get clear about your shadow aspect and be like, could you go down this path? And what do you need to reconcile and resolve and heal in yourself so that you are not susceptible to somebody coming in and asking you to put any kind of principles and values to the side at the chance of fame, at the chance of an entourage, of going to the fanciest restaurants in LA, of rolling up in a Rolls Royce, like all of those types of things. And again, if Katie was just kind of like some rando who was always a part of these organizations and, you know, kind of rose up through the ranks, I think I would have I would have a different level of empathy for her willingness to just follow and do what is told, any means necessary. The fact that she was like, Kundalini Katie, I have a feminist message. I'm about empowering yourself. I'm about, fuck you to the patriarchy. Like, that's what she came out as, and then threw it all in the garbage, like so freaking fast. Just like, bing, bing, we're throwing all this away because I'm going to open an LA studio and I'm going to walk around like a high roller. And I think that could have been such a poignant lesson to bring in, and I think that it is a universal one that is outside of just the field and the community of Kundalini yoga. Certainly in other yoga lineages, this has been present. And then other spiritual and religious lineages, this has been present as well. Like proximity to money and power. How do I get it? I mean, it's prolific across spiritual traditions and paths. And I think that, these practices, I think there was also some kind of not well done research around the history of yoga, the cultural experiences within Indian culture and the Indian diaspora, and people coming over here. We're at the Himalayan Institute checking everything out, right? And there's a huge timeline on the wall around like Swami Rama and coming here in the late 1960s. I mean, I go to Maharishi University, same thing, story. Right. Landed here in the mid 60s. Like, it was a time where this happened. And then there are some cultural pieces to secrecy around practices. That's not a Kundalini thing, and that's not an uncommon thing. I just feel like there are all these threads that they could have really gone into and been curious about. Like, how does guru, Indian spiritual, Eastern spiritual practices and culture intersect with post-Me Too Western spiritual practices? And they didn't do that. It was like...
It was very lazy.
Yeah.
Extremely lazy.
It felt like those magazines at the end of like the checkout aisles in grocery stores, right? Where it's like, alien baby has arrived in a carriage. Like, it just felt very clickbaity and sensationalized. And I think, like, I guess I have to reflect on what are my standards around documentaries, because just calling something a documentary doesn't necessarily mean that it was well researched, right? Like, people all have an agenda.
Well, and that agenda is what informs the entertainment, right? It's like, it is there for entertainment. It's like that definitely, it's like they're jumping on the, it's like they're explaining something very complex. Kundalini yoga isn't like a simple, like, explain it in 4 episodes type of thing. Like, I think that the amount of time they spent actually explaining the practices made it hard to, it's made for people who know nothing about it. And so that they can cheapen it and make it seem corrupt and like make it seem silly because it's from another place, like the Eastern world, like a different thing, that then they can just lump it all together with every other guru who made a mistake or who took advantage. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell that story again. They're trying to tell the story of another man who had a harem of grooming women, and like that they know that will get the most eyebrows raised. They know that will get the biggest, and that is terrible. Like, if they just want to tell the story of Yogi Bhajan, I feel like that would have been a more effective way to do it. But the way that they connected all of it felt very lazy, and it definitely was, like, exactly like you said, like a periodical, like, or like one of those, like, the aliens attack type of like Inquirer type stuff.
Well, I think that one of the people that was interviewed was talking about the article that came out that was like the second coming of Guru Jagat.
Yes.
And I remember when this article was published, I think it was the summer of 23.
I remember that.
And
too.
I was like, oh no, like this is nuts.
Yeah, rats.
So I don't know if somebody read that article, saw that article and pulled her in to it being part of this because she was so like misrepresented in that article. Like the victim blaming that she did when Premka's book came out, like I was nauseated by that. Like,
Oh my
and that
God.
was hard, like
that was
right out of
horrible.
her mouth. It was one of the more disappointing moments of watching somebody who like, you know, like respect other people's art, respect other people's work. And it's like, you're doing the thing in the world. And then, and it might not completely align with what I believe, but you're doing your thing in the world. And then to have such a victim blamey narrative around that. And then I'm also a little bit like, so it sounds like then the end of this documentary is let's turn Katie into the victim. And that's where I'm like, immediate no.
Right.
Everyone gets an opportunity to make active choice. And when you find out that people that you thought were one way are another way and are doing shady stuff, you stop engaging with those people. That's your responsibility as a leader. That's your responsibility as someone who is in alignment and in integrity with spiritual practices. Like you see clearly what's going on and you say, you know what, this is out of integrity and I'm out. And I'm out.
But unfortunately, she
she
already
couldn't-
told everybody that she was picked directly from that person, and like that she was like handpicked by him. Like then she
Weird.
couldn't.
And then she kind of
like, it put her in an
backtracked and said,
impossible
"I actually
situation,
never. When did I say I met him?" She goes, "When did I say that I met Yogi B?" And then it like backtracks to all the times that she said, "Yeah."
But you don't do any kind of like, I mean, you're about to go into business with a man who's telling you that everything has to be in your name because he
Where's
has
the questioning?
lawsuits against
Tons of
him.
them, yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe that's
Yeah,
a
that sounds
moment.
like a great
Like,
idea. That's a good. I'll put it in my name.
I
Right.
think this is a moment to be like, oh, is this the horse that I'm hitching my wagon to? She picked the wrong horse.
Right.
Yeah.
Picked the wrong horse. And
Well,
that was a
And that's the
choice.
thing. It's like never give someone that much power. Like, what are we doing? Never worship anything that much to that ability. It really got me when they were going through the whole thing and some stories came out, and the one person having the interview was like, what's his name? Yogi Jiman. How you pronounce it?
Hari
Hari
Jiwan.
Jiwan.
Yeah.
Hari Jiman. Yeah. They're like, and then his voice changed and it became like a New Jersey accent.
Yeah.
Made me
Yonkers.
laugh. I laughed.
Yeah.
And I said, but I was at a place one time, I was at an immersion, and this person's teaching, they got upset, and then all of a sudden their voice changed to like this southern kind of twang. And I was like, did anyone else catch that? Like, who are we not being ourselves? And
As teachers.
as
I mean,
leaders,
that's an entire class.
I never went back.
And
I said, I can't even. And how about this? Tell everyone what you taught yesterday, Jeannie. What was your class about?
oh, yesterday was the ethics class.
Yesterday
you know,
was
like
the ethics class. And how about
we
this?
always have.
I show up and I'm like, I feel like I'm supposed to be there today. And so I show up yesterday just to listen in, as I do sometimes. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is like my favorite discussion. And so I stuck around to listen while I was working. And then later I saw you post, you're like, no matter where you're at in this study, in this course, try to come to class today. And I was like, divine. I mean, but teaching about ethics and these things within the yogic realm, and really you could just take that way outside, is of importance. And this is one of the reasons why, because this is what can happen when we're not ethical.
Well, and I think
And
that
also to
you've brought.
spot when unethical is happening, and what to do from that point. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right. I think that you've brought up a few times examples in this podcast recording alone around the difference between people who have a teacher persona and people who are living a lifestyle of what they're teaching. You know, yoga, it doesn't take place just in your practice. Like that's what you were saying earlier. And it is not just this isolated period of time. I mean, there's jokes all the time about certain religions where the devotees show up in a certain way at services once a week, right? And then walk out of those ritual spaces and are judging and are doing all the things that, you know, are against what their religious practice would say that they should be doing, are against how they're being when they're in church, when they're in temple, right? And yoga, I think it's not any different than that. It's like you're not just showing up to be a certain way in the middle of a service. This is either how you live your life if you are in integrity, or it is a role, it's a mask, it's another identity that you're putting on. I'm Kundalini Katie. I'm gonna be in this persona. The Hari Jiwan is Hari Jiwan until he's, you know,
Pissed off.
Johnny whatever from New Jersey, you know, like, and so I think that is an important thing to just be on the lookout for when you are going to classes, when you are seeking teachers, when you are following people that you think have figured it all out. Like, sure, this is who they are when they're on camera in front of a classroom. Who are they when they're with their family over the holidays? Who are they if they choose to drink? Who are they, you know, 2 glasses of wine in? Who are they when there isn't that expectation on them? And is there a huge divergence between those things? Because that's not, you know, that's not really authentic, right? It's not showing up in your authenticity. And that's why this is one of the conversations, not just the ethics piece that we teach in class, but the, you know, stop having yoga voices. Like, stop doing that. Like, don't show up to, welcome to class. My name is Jeannie. Like, that would be so weird because you're never going to hear me talk like that at Wegmans. Like, if we run into each other, you know, like in an airport somewhere, I'm not going to be like, hi, how are you today? Like, be who you are and lead from that place. And remember that we are all human beings.
Yeah.
Like, we are just humans. We are completely fallible and perfect in many ways. And any of us are capable of going down this path of power and greed.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to like this comparison, honey, but she's Darth Vader. I'm dead serious, man. I'm like, I use this example, like I often like in jest, but like not really. She was a person who was very susceptible to being manipulated because of what they wanted. Someone found her and did exactly what he wanted with her, and she was okay with it. I don't know. I saw the parallel. I'm like, oh my god, I'm watching. This is Darth Vader. Like, what if like she realized what she did and then like spent the last months of her life saying how evil Hari Jivan and Yogi Bhajan were? Like, would that have earned her some sort of redemption? Does that offset the negative stuff she did in her life? I don't know, but I mean, she didn't get the opportunity, or she got it and didn't want to do anything with it. She just doubled down, as they say, you know. So I just thought that, I'm like, oh my
Well,
god,
we've been rewatching Star Wars because we do this often. And we were just watching Return of the Jedi, and I think you said something, and I was like, I will never forgive Darth Vader. He has no redemption. He has no redemption story for me. He was seduced by the dark side, and we all have both in us, right? It's a perfect example. And he was seduced by the dark side. Do you know who was never tempted by the dark side? Leia.
That's true.
Queen Amidala.
Yep.
Right? Like, real empowered feminists are not seduced by the dark side. They're not.
I can't think of a better way to end this episode.
That would be the title.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to wrap it up, I think most of my frustration for the film is how Kundalini is represented. You know, it's only depicted as like, oh, the turbans and the wearing white and everyone in class doing the same motion. Like they just went out of their way to portray it in such a way without giving it the practice its fair share. Like so that's you know from the
And I
point
want
of
to
my
say
point of
too that at the end they're like saying, "I can't believe she died. She was deathless." How ever listen, we're all going to die someday. This is the cycle of life. None of us are beyond death. None of us are beyond death. And our soul will live on, et cetera, but things are still going to happen in our lives. We can be in practice. I can hit a deer. My partner can get shingles. All of these things can still happen, right? We're just able to kind of deal with things a little bit differently. It doesn't mean you practice Kundalini yoga, so you are beyond all of this. It's just not true for anyone. Things are still going to happen. We're all going to pass one day. None of us are higher than anyone else. So let that be just a reminder too that all things come to an end.
all things come to an end.
And stay in integrity and stay in authenticity.
As much
Well
as
And
said.
have good friends. Have good friends so that
yeah,
they can
have some
they can
checks around you.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
have some friends.
Who's gonna
Yeah.
the more I read about Josh, I've been reading things for when we eventually do like men's group type stuff at Yoga Farm, and this one thing was like have friends, specifically male friends in this case, but have friends that will like hold you accountable, keep you in check, right? Like
Yep. In
if
the
everyone
superior
around
man.
you, yeah, if everyone around you is
Yeah.
saying yes, you might want to
Mhm.
rethink
Yeah.
your friend circle, right? Let's hold
Totally.
each other accountable, right?
And challenge each other. Like,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Right,
Thanks
y'all.
for joining us all
Okay.
virtually, guys. This was
Yeah.
thank God for this technology. For the Wi-Fi
That's right.
pod, we'll hit you with maybe we'll watch a better yoga documentary and give you something we actually something a little bit more
That would be
uplifting in
cool.
the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Matt.
This is Sabrina.
This is Joshua.
Jeannie peaced out
And Jean
early.
over there.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.